Hey everyone, welcome to the Squanch, Wisecrack's Rick and Morty podcast. My name is Jared, and I'm joined here by the classic Squanchers. We got Ryan.
Wubba lubba, sup internet.
And in New York, Alec.
Hey.
All right, so today we're breaking down the season finale of Season 1. We've made it this far.
Wow.
We've done every episode of Season 1.
It's been a journey.
It's been a journey. It's been a really nice revisitation for me. So today we're talking about Season 1, Episode 11, Ricksy Business. But before we get into first impressions of this episode, Alec has some Rick and Morty news to share. So give us what you got, Alec.
So Blu-ray commentary on the latest season just came out, and I have not seen it, but Newsweek did an article that you all should check out. And just in the commentary, there's little clues about season 4 that I thought we should just go over real quick.
Cool.
So I guess one of the points that they talk about is letting the animators drive the narrative more at points. And the sort of example here is the big fight scene in the most recent season finale with the president and Rick. And, you know, just like rather than the writers like Dan Harmon, Justin Roiland, and et cetera, dictating point by point what's happening, letting them just sort of go balls to the wall, letting them sort of let their creativity go a little bit.
Wait, so, you're saying this is something they instituted for season 3 or something that they want to do in season 4?
No. In season 4, the quote is Dan Harmon saying this. He says, "I'm never going to forget that lesson." He's talking about that last episode. He says season 4 is going to have a lot of board-driven fights. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if I remember, Jared didn't like that fight.
I didn't like the actual, you know, like the rhythm of the fight, the gags were good. I just didn't like the idea that Rick had to struggle against a mere mortal.
Okay.
I think it could be cool, although I don't know, like I just don't want it to become that fucking Family Guy chicken fight.
Yeah, but I don't think that has to do with whether it's a board artist or whether it's Dan Harmon. I mean, honestly, if Dan Harmon is willing to give up control, to me that only means that the show might be made faster, so that's a positive development.
Well, honestly, I don't even understand that really, because I mean, animation's super expensive, and what does that mean, letting the animators get creative and go crazy? I mean, is it having them come up at the very, very pre-production animatic stage and saying, "Here's what I'd like to do," or just saying, "Hey, give us this finished scene and we'll..."
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, they probably work with
storyboards.
Yeah, or, you know, like if in the script it says the Indians take the fort. Well, the Indians take the fort could be, you know, like a 5-minute sequence. It could, a whole bunch of things could happen. And maybe Dan Harmon is just saying that, you know, instead of me spelling out the entire action scene, it might be best to
let these people who are pros at making this kind
not
of
only
crazy
that, I'm
animation.
sure it's not just, oh, we're going to let some animator do it. I'm sure he has a team of trusted animators that he's realized, you know, have a real creative flair.
Rock and roll. What's the next piece?
Yeah, so Justin Roiland said no promises here, but he wants to bring back Dr. Wong, which I thought was cool.
Okay.
Good. Love Dr. Wong.
Yeah.
Sigourney Weaver, right?
No, Susan Sarandon.
Right. Okay.
And he wants more sort of school stuff like Tiny Rick, just exploring Morty's sort of native habitat. And also, I feel good about the Dr. Wong and the school stuff. I'm not sure how I feel about this one, but they want to do more Morty's Mind Blower-esque things.
No, one per season is good for me, for what it's worth.
No. I don't mean like multiple, but I just mean rather than it's not. It seems like maybe they're not going back to interdimensional cable. They're going to go back to
they're going to have
style.
They're going to have at least one kind of one-off. What do you call those? Like the bottle episode,
the improv episodes, basically. Well, I don't know what the proper term is.
There was the Seinfeld episode that was in the parking garage. You know, it was just kind of like they take them out of their normal thing and then give them this thing. I don't know what you call that. But.
So, a bottle episode it's usually used to save money, but it's like, oh no, we're stuck in an elevator. I guess we only have to pay these 3 actors stuck in the elevator and shoot at one place. But I don't necessarily know if that could, if it was just happening in the house. And like, it snowed, and I guess they have to stay inside and play. But you know, they're animating all these other things. It's definitely, I don't think that qualifies.
Oh no, I guess it doesn't apply to this animation, but in the sense that it's a totally different format than just a normal story.
I mean, maybe they don't have to write as much because it's basically just, hey, let's all get drunk in the studio and improv a bunch of stuff.
Right.
When are we going to do that at Wisecrack, Jared?
Once you move to LA, bro.
You got a full bar here.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So, was that it?
Yeah.
Cool. Let's talk about Season 1, Episode 11, Ricksy Business. So let's start with first impressions. Ryan, let's start with you.
This has some very memorable parts and characters that we get introduced to, obviously, that kind of become lore in Rick and Morty. But, however, that being said, it's one of my least favorite episodes, honestly.
What?
Like,
Wow.
Oh, shit, sorry. Spilled my water. But yeah, like, I feel like it's very random. Kind of like some of these... I like Interdimensional Cable more, but yeah, like, it's kind of all over the place. The Titanic thing is funny in theory, but it gets kind of old in my opinion. And then also the whole, I like Squanchy, I like Adolf Lincoln or whatever, and but yeah, like, I don't know, you guys proved me wrong.
Alec?
I was going to say an A, but maybe I'm going to go like
Wow.
A- because Jared introduced some doubt. I mean, it's not like to me, the top tier is like
A- seems top tier.
No, A+ is top tier. Do you not know how creating works?
There are multiple A+
Okay.
episodes.
For me, that's like the Tales from the Citadel or Me Seeks and Destroy. This, I'm going to say A- because I think you're right about the random thing, but I kind of like it. And I like it because it introduces so many things that pay off later, or not even pay off, but are just like now classic. Like Squanchy's fucking awesome.
Bird person.
It's literally the name of our podcast. Bird person and Tammy. By the way, did any of you notice like what Tammy says? Kind of like not in the background, but it's like muffled under other things that are happening. Like,
You mean what
she
she whispers into Bird Person's ear?
No, this is when we first see her.
Oh, she's like, "Oh, make my hair look drunk."
No, this is even before that. She's talking to someone. And it's sort of just
she's talking about
glossed over.
bukkake. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's like, I really like bukkake. I'm not sure if I would try it.
Yeah. I think this is the first time I realized that she said that.
But yeah, sorry. So Tammy, Squanchy, Adolf Winkler, and then just some like really good jokes, which is why I appreciate this episode.
I have to give it an A to an A+. I think this is one of the funniest episodes. I
Really?
really enjoyed this episode. One of my favorite characters is Gearhead, and this is definitely my favorite use of him. And I think I don't really like the Titanic plot that much, but I really do like the party scene. I think that, yeah, it's random. I mean, it's certainly not as random as Interdimensional Cable, but I think a lot of the jokes are really cool. And like, I love Slow Mobius. Once again, Gearhead. Some of the gags aren't great, but I think this episode is hilarious. I found myself laughing a ton. Bird Person, come on, man. So good.
The characters
Bird
get A+.
Bird Person flying away with Tammy, so good.
Yeah.
You know, even just like the "What up, my glib glops," you know, and just the sci-fi people mingling with the high school people. Adolf Winkler.
Random is a wrong word. Unfocused, I would say, is the right word. Most of these their episodes, their A+ episodes to me, are so well written and structured.
There's no adventure in this episode.
Exactly. That's why maybe it just threw me for a loop. I don't know.
Well, this is maybe something you could speak to because I don't know as much about film as you do, but like they're kind of recreating your sort of high school party movie and aren't like. Is the reason it's unfocused maybe because those are kind of unfocused?
I think it's because
I guess you haven't seen Risky Business starring my man Tom Cruise.
No, it is like the high school party movie trope. But if it was just that, it'd be, I feel like, different. But mixing that with the Titanic, you know, like it's like that's so random, you know, like.
Well,
like
yeah,
the
A and B plots don't always complement each other in any literal fashion,
right? But this in particular seemed
I
kept wanting to be at the party. I didn't, you know.
Yeah, I agree with you only because I don't think that the Titanic plot is that awesome.
Right, and that's probably why it gets the direction of my ire. Continue.
Okay, I think ire is maybe a strong word. What was the grade that you gave it?
I'd give it a C-.
Oh fuck, shit.
Boo.
Yeah, man, harsh. All right, let's go into a recap. Beth and Jerry are off to spend the weekend at a Titanic-themed getaway, leaving Morty, Summer, and Rick with the house all to themselves. If anything in the house is damaged, Beth promises there will be no more Rick and Morty adventures. Seconds after they leave, Summer and Rick decide to have a party. At the Titanic attraction, everyone is captivated by the unsinkable ship except Beth, who enlists the maid Lucy to join Jerry in all the themed events instead of her. Back at the Smith house, Summer's high school guests start funneling in, as do Rick's sci-fi guests, including Rick's back-when buddies Bird Person and Squanchy. It's not long before everything is trashed and Morty starts to panic. Morty attempts to hit on Jessica, Summer tries to charm the cool kids and distance herself from her nerdy friend Nancy, and Rick tries to duck his failed experiment at creating a morally centrist superleader, Aberdolf Linkler, when Morty accidentally transports them to a testicle monster-populated dimension. In order to get back home and relieve the party of the buzzkills, Rick and Summer send Linkler, Morty, and Nancy to find some Galaxian crystals. Linkler dies getting the crystals, which turn out to be some kind of cocaine variant. Somehow the rail system fails and the Titanic doesn't hit an iceberg, and Lucy threatens Jerry at gunpoint to draw him and fuck her. But Beth saves the day with a horse book to the head moments before Lucy is about to rape him. Beth and Jerry leave the park and run over Lucy in her attempt to do a Cape Fear. Rick transports the house back to the original dimension, and Summer gets disinvited from the after-party after being such a bitch to Nancy. Morty sees Jessica back with Brad, and Bird Person tells Morty that he has a choice not to go back on adventures with Rick anymore. But Morty ultimately decides to wake Rick up in time for him to freeze time seconds before their parents arrive. In the end, Rick, Morty, and Summer clean the house, and Rick celebrates the end of Season 1. End of episode and end of season.
But before we continue, can I read something from this chat?
Sure.
It's pretty interesting. A guy named Maximus was a character designer on this episode.
Oh.
And he said they did this episode because they ran out of money and needed to make an episode where they could reuse all the assets from the previous 9 episodes, hence the house party.
See,
that kind of honestly helps out my point. I think.
You know,
I noticed something.
I appreciate these kind of insights because as much as people want a fan theory about shit, at the end of the day, all this comes down to business. You know,
money, baby. Thank you,
right.
Maximus, for that.
Thank you, Maximus.
Also, John Haymaker says, Jared, you said glip glop. You better hope a Traflorkian doesn't hear you say that.
I know. I know, because that's, what does he say? It's like if the N-word had a baby with all the bad words for Jew.
Yeah. And the C word.
No.
The N-word and the C word.
The C word and was raised by all of the bad words for Jews.
Excuse me.
This actually makes sense of something I noticed and I wanted to bring up, which is that we see people from the councils of Rick at the party, which doesn't make sense.
Well,
they're the cool ones.
Yeah, you know, even Rick said, I've got at least 10 Ricks to tell about this, doofus
but
Morty
it's like
guy.
the council. It's the count, like the guy, like on the panel of Ricks, not just like at the.
You
Citadel.
don't think that Rick would have a mole on the inside of the Federation of Ricks? Are you fucking crazy, Alec?
I guess
it could be that Rick is in costume and maybe thought it was a costume party.
Right. Anything's possible.
All right, so first I want to talk about the title. So obviously I already said that, you know, Ricksy Business is a reference to Risky Business, which is actually one of my favorite movies. So in the movie, it stars Tom Cruise back when he was like 19. This was the movie that catapulted him to be a sex symbol at that age. And, you know, when you're a sex symbol that age and you're an A-list actor for 40 years, of course you become a little bit crazy. But so in the movie, Tom Cruise has to throw a party because he accidentally wrecked his dad's Porsche, and the party is actually kind of like a party/harem. Basically, he's charging people to come and have sex with these prostitutes in his parents' house. And basically, the conflict of the last act is that he has to get all of his parents' furniture back after a mobster takes it from him.
Not because it was covered in semen.
Not because it was covered in semen. They don't really address that. But in the same way that, you know, the last act is basically just counting the seconds before Tom Cruise's parents come home. And if they come home and they see anything is in place or anything is misplaced, then everything's going to go to shit. So too are Summer, Morty, and Rick told not to mess up the house and are in a race against the clock for, you know, seconds before Beth and Jerry get home. And I think there's maybe a deeper connection here. Now, I think I'm probably overthinking it here, but I want to bring it up anyway. So at the end, this was interesting. At the end of this episode, Rick says that his new catchphrase is, "I care about my grandkids." And then, of course, he's fucking around. And then he says, "I'm just kidding. My new catchphrase is, I don't give a fuck." And I don't know if this is relevant or not, or if this even crossed the writer's mind, but one of the kind of the character Joel, which is Tom Cruise plays in Risky Business, his arc is that he's trying at the beginning to control his life to such a degree that it kind of hinders him from experiencing any authentic experience. He doesn't take any risks. Everything in his life is manicured so that he can get into Princeton, blah, blah, blah. And then what his friend tells him is that, look, dude, sometimes you just got to say fuck it. And that's basically the lesson of the movie, is that sometimes you just got to say fuck it. And then Rick, you know, in a much less kind of paradigm shifting moment, just all of a sudden says that my new mantra is just fuck it.
That's true. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Risky Business too.
Yeah, so good.
So fucking good. You know, the first time I saw that, I was like 12, and the whole time I didn't get the whole prostitute thing. You know, I just didn't know what was going on. I was like, what is this movie about?
I don't know if I would either. I saw the movie for the first time probably in college, so. And that director hasn't made like anything since. Paul Brickman. Whatever happened to him? Is that his name? Yeah.
He fucked up.
Yeah. So anyway, hats off to the crew for referencing one of my favorite Tom Cruise movies. All right, so let's talk about Aberdolf Linkler. I mean, come on, man. This is classic. How can you not love this episode with Linkler?
It's not a reference to your favorite news magazine program you watch at night?
Risky Business? Is that a news program?
Oh, wait, no. I was thinking Ricksy Minutes. Sorry. Never mind.
Oh, that's
okay.
60 minutes.
Cut that.
We're live, baby.
Yeah,
the internet's written in ink.
Yeah. Aberdolf Linkler, like fucking one of the best characters ever. What does he stand for?
Well, some of the best jokes, I think, are just when he says things like, you know, on the one hand, I think that all men are created equally, but on the other, and then
they interrupt them.
Yeah, and then Morty's like, okay.
Yeah.
Or just that, like, I will emancipate you from your inferior genes. It's rare that I really fall for jokes that are as silly as that, but man, I don't know, it really tickled me. It's some of the biggest laughs all season for me.
Yeah, man. I mean, just they sometimes will introduce a character, and just in the character's name, you totally know what they're all about, kind of, and then they exploit that, like they're the ambiguities. Yeah. I love the scene when he's fighting with what's his face,
with Brad.
Yeah, when he's fighting with Brad, and somebody's like, "Oh, you." So he's like, "What? Shall I kiss your ass?" He's like, "Well, kind of."
And he does like that little thing with his arms. He's like, "Oh, what do I do here?"
Yeah,
I can't get out of
torn,
this situation.
Right?
Yeah. I can we just spend a second to talk about Brad? Brad is he's one of my favorite prototypical cool kid characters.
Yeah, he's awesome.
You're Freddie Prinze Jr. essentially.
And he goes off the rails really quickly.
I hope we get a Brad-centric episode.
That'd be awesome.
Is Brad always the one that Summer's after?
Brad is always the one that Summer's after, and Brad is always the one that Jessica kind of is pseudo-dating, or she kind of just falls back into his arms, or falls back into dating him because he's the cool jock, basically. All right. So since we've talked about this in one of our videos, but one of the things that, on top of being hilarious, that I appreciate about Aberdolf Linkler is it's more about what we've called in our videos the Frankenstein Complex that is pretty present throughout various episodes of the show. And that is that in Frankenstein, there's the classic thematic play between the creator and the creation. And we see a greater trend in this show of the creation showing resentment toward their creator. Or just simply that existence is pain and shit. But, we see that in the Ricks Must Be Crazy when Rick's green counterpart, resents his creator. We see that all the time with the Meeseeks when they're kind of saying, you wrote me into this. And, I pulled a quote from Frankenstein that I'd like to read that I think is... So let me just read the Aberdolf Linkler quote first. He says, "Rick, you brought me into this world a suffering abomination, tortured by the duality of its being, but I shall finally know peace when I watch the life drain from your wretched body." And so not only is this hilarious, but it works very much with this idea of, people being angsty about being thrown into an existence that they didn't choose, which is an essential part of existentialism, or a lot of existential thinkers, and is an essential part of this show. So the quote I wanted to read from Frankenstein, this is when Frankenstein's monster is similarly lamenting the fact that he was created in such a way to where he could only experience pain. He says,
I want to correct you so hard. I was waiting for you to say Frankenstein instead of Frankenstein's monster, but you didn't fall into the trap, Jared.
I'm sorry, I actually did make that mistake. It is Frankenstein's monster I'm talking about.
No, that's what you said. I was waiting for you to say, never mind. Sorry. I'm being a dumb, pretentious asshole.
So the monster says, "Hateful day when I received life, accursed creator. Why did you form a monster so hideous that even you turned from me in disgust? God in pity made man beautiful and alluring after his own image, but my form is a filthy type of yours, more horrid even from the very resemblance. Satan had his companions, fellow devils, to admire and encourage him, but I am solitary and abhorred." God, that just makes me fucking depressed.
Right.
This, Frankenstein is so good, but goddamn is it depressing. But, but I like how the show will kind of playfully take what is pretty fucking painful and angsty and really serious and like very, very powerful and just kind of tweak it and play around with it and make it a little flippant and make it ultimately hilarious, but still hinting toward a greater, real, powerful angst. I don't know. It's one of my favorite jokes simply because it's really smart and really funny.
Well, you just said it was silly too.
It is.
Yeah, it's all those things.
It's all those things.
That's why the show rocks.
Yeah.
What I think is interesting about that quote, that's like this joke comes up a lot about just resentment towards your anger, but that quote to me...
You mean resentment toward your creator?
Well, it comes up all the time in Rick and Morty.
Well, you said resentment toward your anger.
No, creator. Sorry.
Yeah.
Resentment towards your creator comes up in Rick and Morty, but that quote seems to also have a specific thing that I think is not explored that I think Rick and Morty could also make jokes about, which is like Frankenstein isn't just complaining about being born. He's complaining about Frankenstein's monster. Shit, fuck. Sorry. Frankenstein's monster.
You pretentious shit.
Is like mad for being created in like this isolated state. Like he's saying like, even the devil has his fellow demons, but I've got jack shit.
Right. Well, similarly, Aberdolf Linkler is saying that you've basically created me in a state where I can't exist without being just pulled in two different directions every time,
Right.
all the time. My existence is literally going to be pain, and there's no matter what, because, yeah, you've created a monster that can only suffer. And similarly, Frankenstein's monster says, not only am I so disgusting, but I'm utterly lonely. And that's why later in the book, he tries to blackmail Frankenstein into creating him a bride. But that doesn't end up too well.
The motivations or reasons for Frankenstein and Rick to make these monsters. What was it again? It was Rick says he wanted to find a neutral leader.
It's actually pretty similar because in the book, Frankenstein is literally just pursuing science for science sake. He's just experimenting.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
He's just basically trying to push things forward. Without any real regard for the consequences of breeding this new life. And it's a little bit more angsty in the book because, later Victor Frankenstein realizes that, what he did was a little bit, it doesn't work out too well for him. But Rick is just like, oh, yeah, fuck, I actually, I got bored basically and tried to create this like morally neutral super leader and, well, it didn't work out too well. And now this guy's just a total asshole,
Yeah.
So it's funny how Rick doesn't really seem to be fazed at all by the fact that he created something that can only suffer. Which is like, yeah, he's like Victor Frankenstein with zero guilt.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Titanic thing. So first of all, what did you guys not like about this? Or Alec, do you feel any differently about it?
The Titanic?
The Titanic plot, yeah.
I kind of liked it, although reflecting back on it, it is like empty. Is maybe not empty, but I thought it's just a funny premise to say like, oh no, we're not gonna sink. And I also like that Jerry, as a Titanic fanatic, is kind of like low key lore. I think we brought this up in the episode, but there we see in season 3. Jerry's sad apartment, and we're like, oh shit, he has the Titanic poster from when he went on that trip. But actually we see that at the party he had the Titanic poster before he even went on the Titanic trip.
There is something about comparing Jerry to Leonardo DiCaprio's character in Titanic, because Leonardo DiCaprio's character is just like this poor schlub, and he's getting this girl who's way out of his league, way up the socioeconomic ladder. And I guess it's not so much the socioeconomic ladder, but as we're constantly reminded, Jerry is just a schlub who impregnated this girl in high school, and as Rick is always saying, my daughter is too good for you. Like, I can't believe you married this asshole. So I can see why Jerry would have this affinity for Titanic, because in a way, Beth is his Rose. It's basically a girl that he has no right being in love with or marrying, who, you know, he made his own.
Well, and his relationship with the janitor lady, that's supposed to kind of be a reversal of
I wanted to talk about Lucy.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I have this theory that this Lucy thing was probably pretty different in an earlier draft, and this is based on nothing other than the fact that it's interesting that Lucy is like a maid. She's like, you know, she's never been allowed to participate. She's basically kind of like of a lower class than even Jerry. Yeah. And when we watch the movie Titanic, there is a significant theme at play about class. So, you know, in the real story of the Titanic, yes, the lifeboats were saved for the aristocrats. You know, they got women, children, aristocrats, they got the first pick of the boats, and that's something that James Cameron emphasizes in the movie. But also, there's the thing where, like, Rose in the movie, she's living, you know, her privileged life on the upper deck with all these, like, uptight aristocrat dudes who just sip brandy and, you know, sit around and be super lame. But then when she goes down to the bottom parts with Jack, you know, there's this vitality of the working class where they fiddle and they you know, they drink and you know, like, oh my God, this is real life. You know, this is this is passion, this is feeling, this is excitement. And I know Alec is laughing because I'm drawing a lot from our boy who hopefully will be a guest on our podcast
Spoiler
soon,
alert.
Slavoj Žižek. Yeah, and so this class dynamic of the fact that the janitor lady has never gotten to actually experience the Titanic event, and, you know, she's now finally able to do it, and she even says that you know, she's like getting vengeance against the upper class because, like, she's had to clean all their mess. Like, she even says, like, in this car where everybody else fucks, I have to, like, the floor drops down and I have to clean all their mess, but now I will be the one making the mess. And there is this kind of resentment toward the upper class, but it never really goes anywhere. And in my theory, I think in an earlier version of the script, this class dynamic probably evoked themes from the film a little bit more, but then probably in later drafts it was just like, you know what, fuck that, that's too brainy, let's just make it like, you know, some funny like pseudo rape jokes. What do you mean it doesn't
go anywhere? Because I mean she at first he's into it and then he's not, and then she draws a gun and then Beth gets her.
I guess only the fact that she's a janitor and that she, you know, is saying that, like, oh, you know, I'm going to be the one to make the mess this time. But really, like, the conflict is just that she's creepy and that she's, like, basically a rapist. That becomes the central conflict more than the fact that, you know, Jerry doesn't want to be seen with, you know, someone of a lower class, or that there's some sort of class gulf, or like it's all just like the.
Well, that's where I would say conflict, the turn is, because you think, you know, like right when he meets her, you're kind of like, oh, this is funny. Like, I get where this is going. They're gonna do everything from the Titanic, but, you know, it's a role reversal. But then at some point, when he's like, you know what, I'm out of here, then she pulls a gun on him, and then it becomes a totally different story. And
yeah, well, if it were to be more of a 1-to-1, then Jerry would, you know, like then basically the janitor would say, hey, Jerry, you want to come to the bottom of the deck or like the behind the scenes version? I'll show you how real people live. And he goes and he parties with all the other janitors. That would have been funny if they had that scene. Yeah, but they don't have that. She just becomes a rapist, you know.
But I think it's a reversal in that it's not that Jerry's experiencing working class vitality. It's like the opposite trope. I'll call it like the Pretty Woman, where like Jerry, this bash in the middle class is like, you know, saving her. And like, if anything, if they really wanted to reverse it, like Jerry would be introducing to her to all the banalities of like middle class life.
Yeah, because he's supposed to be playing Leonardo. Yeah, absolutely, Alec.
Well, no, in that situation, he would be Rose, because she is the quote unquote lower class person.
No. But I'm saying, like, if they wanted to reverse it, it would be like if it would be not Rose sort of basking in the vitality of the working class. It would be Leonardo DiCaprio basking in, instead of like wealth, basking in like banal middle class bullshit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, that would be one way for them to play with that, but they don't really do either. And, you know, I think it's probably a smart thing to do. I think that probably if they were to go that route, they would have lost a lot of people. And I think that, you know, a creepy, cellulite-laden older woman raping somebody at gunpoint is probably an easier laugh to get than what we're talking about.
Yeah. And let's not forget, Jerry's been raped before. We figured that out in this episode.
Yes, that was like
By
when I
a
saw
Scandinavian man.
Yeah, so there's a really weird part in this episode that I had forgotten about completely that really says something about Jerry's lore. He says, "What does a rapist look like exactly, Beth? Is it a Slavic man wearing a denim jacket with a patchy beard and a scent of cheap champagne wafting over his blister-pocked lips?" And then as he's saying this, he's like trembling and like tearing up. And then Beth just goes, "What?"
Right. I'm sorry, Slavic, not Scandinavian. But
yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I kind of had forgotten all about that moment too.
Unless this is a movie reference.
I don't think so. I think it's supposed to be one of those things where you mention something so specific that it obviously happened to you.
Yeah, it's definitely it's funny, but if you think about it for a while, and if you really do incorporate it into Jerry's overall character lore, you know, there's I mean, it's hard to ignore. It can explain a lot of things. It definitely, I mean, if you wanted to go there, you could paint him as a victim of, I mean, that's just fucked up. Of course,
yeah,
no wonder
he got fucking raped by a Slavic man.
If he got raped by a Slavic man, no wonder he doesn't have a job. Shit. He needs some fucking counseling, man. He needs to go to Dr. Wong.
Like back to the Titanic thing though. Like I said at the beginning, I definitely think the whole thing is funny in concept. You know, like when I think about it, I laugh. But every scene, they did it so many times, and it was kind of, you know, they hit a bunch of those scenes in Titanic that I kind of got old. And then also when you matched it together with the party, I just wish they were two different episodes.
Do you guys think that the Titanic not sinking and that being a tragedy, is that funny to you?
Yeah, that was funny.
It was funny to me. Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was just one of those things where I was like, okay, like I see where they're going with this.
Yeah, that's kind of how I was.
And then and then it draws out for another minute, and
then they got
really
James
surprising.
Cameron calamari or whatever.
James Cameronian rings.
Yeah, that's right.
that's pretty funny.
They broke the fourth wall.
Oh yeah, I want to go back to the Zizek reading of Titanic just because I think it's funny, but also so Zizek says, and this kind of connects to like why is it a tragedy that they don't hit the iceberg? Well, Zizek says that the iceberg is actually the hero of the film, of the original Titanic, because without the iceberg, without this tragedy, the underwhelming inevitability of her love with Jack will play out. So if it wasn't for the iceberg and, you know, they reached their destination and they got off the boat and they, you know, started a life together, she would eventually get bored of him. She would discard him and then she'd go back to being rich, which we see at the beginning of the movie when she's old and she has like this other husband that she had, and she remembers this as the most erotic moment of her life. That she's able to maintain this romantic narrative of idealized love, this little pocket, this narrative that she's able to tell herself that has this association with this very intense feeling behind it. And like that has almost been like a piece of utility for her in her life to say like, oh, you know, I have this crystallized moment of absolute passion that isn't muddied by the inevitabilities of real life. You know, I had the best sex of my life. It was Leonardo DiCaprio at an age he was super young, and then he died, you know? So I can hang on to the narrative that it was true love because none of the mundanities of real life are there to sully the true love.
I've always cracked up at that reading, and I love The Pervert's Guide to Cinema movie, you know, when he talks about it. Yeah. But I've always thought that he was projecting a lot on the Rose as a character.
Oh, sure.
Because, you know, like she's gone her whole life living as an aristocrat and she's fucking miserable and she doesn't like the guy, you know, so it's like this thing probably did have a transcendental effect. And then, it's like everyone, talk about people getting connected after a car crash. I mean, this is like, the worst of the worst of that. And so it was like a huge moment in her life. And I think that I guess if the iceberg didn't happen, just her meeting Jack still felt, I don't know, real enough to me, communicated in the movie.
It definitely, I mean, the reading certainly, like, basically shits in everybody's cereal. Everyone wants to believe that it is real true love.
Of course.
But he brings up a point that, like, this is actually like something that happens a lot in old aristocratic societies where the aristocratic woman has this crisis of identity, and in order to, she basically has to go and basically slum it with people in the lower class to reinvigorate this vitality. And she basically, it's like she goes and she, experiences something new and she gets all of that experimentation out, and then she goes back to the comfortable life. It's like a bunch of Woody Allen movies. It's like Crimes and Misdemeanors and Match
still
Point.
Happens though. They're called crust punks. They're like have a trust fund, but they're like, oh, I'm going to be like, homeless for a month or 2 months, or I'm going to like move into shithole.
So is that poverty tourism? Is that the same thing?
Yeah, no, we've talked about this before. Although maybe poverty tourism, I think there's two connotations. Maybe it's just like class tourism, like I'm going to pretend to be a poor person.
Mm.
So do you think for Zizek to be to be right, like an alternate ending would be the old Rose being like around, at a soup kitchen or something, like with her?
No, I mean, she wouldn't choose poverty, but maybe you're saying that, like, what would have to happen in the framing device of the movie to maintain the idea of it being true love?
Right.
At the very least, she wouldn't have remarried.
She did have the fucking necklace,
Yeah, because it was worth how much money?
Oh, yeah, I guess that had nothing to do with him. Never mind, keep going.
Yeah, in fact, the necklace was given to her by the person she was set to marry at the time.
Right.
I think if it weren't for the iceberg, Rose and Jack would have turned into Jerry and Beth. And yeah, to your point, Jared, that's the biggest tragedy.
Right, exactly.
We don't need the alternate ending. We have Rick and Morty.
Yeah. All right, I want to talk about just some of the great jokes. Mm-hmm. So I just want to talk about Gearhead. This is
best part of the episode.
Best part of the episode. Probably one of my favorite jokes of the whole series is just because everyone's been at this part of a party. It's when you just see Rick next to Gearhead, and Gearhead's like, something people don't realize about the Gear Wars is that it was never really about the gears at all. And and first of all, like, this is the first time we see Gearhead. So, like, without context of knowing who this character is and just seeing this guy made out of gears and talking about the Gear Wars and, like, talking about it in this kind of, like, nebbish, like, well, actually kind of tone that people like to do at parties, I just thought was so fucking good. I loved it so much. And then when we, like, cut back after some of the Titanic plot, we cut back to the party, and Gearhead is like he's playing like a lute, and he's like, and the gears would turn for 1,000 years until the day that they stopped. It's so good. I kind of just wish that Gearhead never comes back after that, because they just nailed it. Yeah. And like any more context of his character,
downhill.
It's downhill from there. Like just Jack
and Rose's love.
Right, it's exactly the exposition that is presented just by looking at him and hearing the cadence of his voice and what he's saying is already enough to sell the joke a million times better.
I've been in that situation too, where like everyone's at a party and everyone's hanging out, and then someone pulls out the acoustic guitar and everyone like kind of has to be quiet,
And there's always the one guy who like wants to talk about something serious, like. And wants to show like that he's the elevated expert on it, and this is just so perfect.
What's your move to get out of a Gearhead situation?
I do exactly what Rick did. He goes, "Hey Morty, have you met Gearhead? I bet he would love to hear about the Gear Wars." And then Gearhead says, "How much do you know about the Gear Wars exactly?" I love the word "exactly" is just.
I love his next line is when he goes nothing, and he goes, "Ooh, I envy you."
Yeah. Like, who the fuck cares?
Wait, Ryan, what's your strategy in that situation?
I go, dude, sorry, I gotta go pee so bad right now. And then I go there for about 5 minutes, hang out, and then I duck out somewhere else.
Hills.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also like one of the jokes. It's so Rick is introducing Morty to another one of his sci-fi friends, and he goes, and Morty says, "The entire house is being destroyed," and Rick says, Morty, this guy's entire planet was destroyed. Have some perspective, bro.
Yeah.
I see. I mean, like, yeah, you can have kind of like random sci-fi jokes that are, kind of lame throughout this, but I think all of these are so good.
I don't think all of them are so good, but all the ones you've mentioned so far have been ace.
And I also just love, when Summer says, "This is finally my chance to gain some footing with the cool kids," and Rick says, "Geez, that's why you party? That you are 17." And then Summer's like, "Why do you party?" And he says, "Do you get riggedy wrecked, son?" Hell yeah. All right, well, that's all I've got. Anyone want to mention anything before we get to the mailbag?
I think we squanched it all.
Oh, we didn't even talk about fucking Squanchy. Hell yeah. I mean, Squanchy, he squanched. He was fucking Squanch. That's all I got to say.
I mean, he squanched hard, and yeah, thank you, Squanch, for the name.
Yeah.
Does Squanchy come back at any point?
Yeah,
he's in. He's at Bird Person's wedding. Remember when he goes like he gets like fucking Super Saiyan?
Yeah, I do.
All right, well then let's move into the mailbag. Alec, I believe, has some questions picked out for us.
Sweet.
I do have some questions. All right. Our first email is from Chung, who says, this is about the Machine of Unspeakable Doom in season 1, episode 10.
Oh, good.
What's that episode called, Jared?
Close Rick Counters of the Rick Kind.
Right. Anyway, so Rick's supposed torture. Anyway, Chung says, my impression of the Machine of Unspeakable Doom is that it transfers the core of one's identity and knowledge into a place that is inarticulable and replaces it with an upending stream of consciousness that cannot be stopped. Imagine living your life feeling like everything is familiar, possible, and tantalizingly within reach, but you are unable to actualize those possibilities.
Wait, isn't that just real life?
The part of you that can articulate that knowledge and act on it is no longer accessible. Instead, everything you're consciously aware of are images and sounds that you've been exposed to, stitched together in strange dreamlike ways. You are forced to live in this constantly changing nightmare with a narrative you cannot control, but sort of are semi-conscious of your ability to break out of it, but are actually unable to do so. And every 10 seconds, your balls get stabbed.
Wow, he's forgetting about that part.
But now hold on a second. If your balls are getting stabbed, like when you feel pain, that is in your conscious mind, right? So if your balls are getting stabbed and that goes into your unconscious mind, does it even hurt?
See, no, I think it's more about being in this dream where like everything's like within reach, but also unreachable. It's like a dream like way where you can't affect anything. You're not in control. In addition to being in this dreamlike state where you can't control anything, your balls get stabbed every 10 seconds.
Right. But I mean, is what I said not worth considering?
I think you're like,
if you're saying we're overthinking it, I mean, come on. Like, I mean, the whole question is.
I think you're over literalizing it, maybe.
Okay.
No. Like I think it means conscious and unconscious. Like your sleep, not like
right. But pain is a sensation that is manifests in your conscious mind, and if those are being reversed, then your balls would be stabbed, and that would manifest itself in your unconscious mind now. And so, if your unconscious is something that you can't access, then how would you feel the pain?
Well, your physical balls would just get mangled after a while.
I mean, that's going to happen either way, and that would suck for sure. But
there's going to be nothing left to stab is the biggest plot hole.
I mean, if your balls were just being stabbed with like a toothpick, like that might not be. If you don't feel it, I don't think it would do any permanent damage.
Okay. One thing I wanted to bring up. You said anything else in the episode? The Wubba Lubba Dub Dub meaning is revealed in this episode.
It is,
and it brings a whole new meaning to Rick.
Yeah, and I think
in his character,
and it's the season finale, and I think that aside from Maximus telling us that they did this episode mostly for budget reasons, I think that they did give it that sense of season finality by revealing something very important about Rick, and I think the meaning of Wubba Lubba Dub Dub goes to inform a lot of his character later in the seasons, as well as the way that we interpret his character. So yeah, that was it is weird how the end of this episode, when Bird Person tells Rick that, it feels, it's like one of the slower paced moments of the entire show. It's rare that the show moves slowly at all. And, that really does seem to be a big kind of break in the overall rhythm of the episode. But
I thought it was a very sweet moment. And the first time I saw it, I kind of forget about that moment. But the first time I saw it, like, I remember thinking, like, wow, like thinking about Rick, you never get a down moment with Rick, ever.
Yeah.
You never, like, get, like, have a real character, like, this is what I'm thinking moment. But that was like, wow, Bird Person. It took Bird Person to tell us.
Yeah.
And thank you, Bird Person.
One of the best. Bird Person's such a good character.
Yeah.
All the characters they introduce in this episode
come back and are great.
Yeah, I mean, but are all classics like Bird Person, Squanchy. I know I said I'd rather not see Gearhead again, but hey, he's still so good.
Mm-hmm.
Chances are, and by the way, in the post-credit sequence, we realize that Linkler is still alive. He could come back.
That's what I want. I want an Aberdolf Linkler episode.
Yeah. Anyway, so what's the next question?
All right, the next email is from Sina. I apologize in advance. Dear the Squanch, thanks for the podcast. Listen to it on SoundCloud, by the way. Were we dropping SoundCloud shade earlier?
Maybe. I don't know.
Who knows what we're dropping shade on? Anyway, Sina continues. What you guys made me realize is that if it's confirmed that Sorry, let me contextualize this and let me take that again. This is about Evil Morty and the theory that maybe Evil Morty is Rick's original Morty. So Sina says, okay, so what you guys made me realize is that if it's confirmed that this Morty is not our Rick's first, then there is a good argument to be made that Evil Morty is. First of all, why would Evil Morty devise a plan to kill all those Ricks and frame Rick C-137? As you said, to lure him. So the question is, why lure him? Why download his memories? Because they have been together and he knows exactly what he has seen and is looking for some specific memory that he's aware of. And I think that explains why Rick cries seeing Morty's birth. He's seeing the birth of the Morty that would go rogue. The Morty who'd get too cocky and create lots of problems for everyone, and the Morty that perhaps Rick had to put down but ultimately couldn't. A story so bitter he can't tell his now Morty about until he gets older. What do you guys think
Is there going to be like an Obi-Wan Anakin thing where it's been revealed that in a different reality Rick has taught Morty the ways of the genius scientist, and then he goes to the dark side and turns on him?
Maybe.
That's what it sounds like they're setting up, man.
Yeah, man.
9 movies left.
Oh, well. And there's infinite movies now with Star Wars. Who's got them solo tickets?
I might be going to the premiere, dog.
Oh, really?
Yeah, maybe. My friend
invited me. Cool. All right, what's next?
I don't think we read this email before about reverse drafts.
Reverse giraffes?
Your confusion says we haven't. So this is an email from Nico. Hey guys, welcome back to the Squanch, Alec. Thank you, Nico. I missed a few episodes, but glad you are back. You guys wondered about the reverse draft when reading the mail on Decoding Interdimensional Cable and Bushworld Adventures podcast. This was one of the porn names, was reverse draft. We were very confused about. Do you remember?
Oh, yes. Now I remember.
So reverse draft was one of the parasites in Total Recall, which we totally forgot about. And there's a quote that's in the show. You know me, I'm reverse draft. I have short legs and I have a short neck and legs.
Yeah, it's not coming back to me.
And Nico continues that he believes. Nico believes he is voiced by the same voice actor that puts the POTUS in Rick and Morty, Keith David.
I see. For some reason I thought that Total Recall was in season 1, and apparently it's in season 2. It's funny, I season 1 and 2 very blend together a lot for me. There are a lot of episodes that now that we're at the end of season 1, I'm like, oh, that episode's in okay, yeah, I guess we're waiting for that next one, yeah. What is the episode you guys are most looking forward to breaking down in season 2 as we continue?
I gotta look at the list.
Yeah,
I mean, for me,
man.
The one episode that we haven't covered that I think is still one of the smartest is definitely the Unity episode. To me, I think that's the one that's left that's on par with when we did our favorite episodes like the Meeseeks one, the Devil one, the the Tinyverse one. I think that's kind of the one left that is top shelf smartest Rick and Morty episodes that we haven't covered.
I'd also throw on there, unless we've already covered it and I forgot, the season finale, season 2. When he is put into the prison.
No, I don't. Yeah, we haven't covered that one yet.
Yeah, that one's awesome.
Yeah. And actually, have we not covered we haven't covered Get Swifty.
Holy fucking fuck.
Yeah, so that's another great one.
On the floor.
That's right. I think Ryan might do that for YouTube Live.
Yeah, Ryan, people on YouTube Live are constantly commenting about your legs.
Hey, it's kind of cold, so I always like cross them like this. They just got to put up with
Those
are
are
white ass legs.
Those are award-winning legs. Ryan has
Thank
many
you.
track records at his old high school. Do you still
Do you
maintain them?
really?
I had one. I had the 2 mile. No, I was not good at the track. And
You
and
have
then
a
it
record.
got immediately broken though.
Oh.
Yeah. So
One time
thanks,
Ryan
Jared, for trying to make me look cool.
One time Ryan hiked a keg up a 15-minute steep hike with no trail by himself. I don't know how
All
he
in the
did
name
it.
of the party.
All in the name of the party.
Well, we dug a big hole and we
And-
had a rap party up there.
We dug a big hole, put the
keg
we
in
put
ice.
the keg in the hole.
Yeah.
And I'll never know how a single human being could do that by themselves, but I guess
took
that's
like an
just,
hour.
That's just the will at work.
Not all heroes wear capes.
Yeah, but they do have nice legs.
Every single one.
All right, well,
Thank you.
that just about does it for today. Want to remind everybody to, if you have a second, leave us a review on iTunes. Also, Alec is hosting a Westworld podcast, so it's called The Maze. You can definitely check it out on iTunes, SoundCloud.
It's good. Go
Yeah.
listen.
Wherever you guys are listening to this, you can also listen to The Maze. So if you're watching Westworld right now, you're going to want to listen to it because these guys are on their A game trying to figure this shit out.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Other than that, be sure to check out wisecrackplus.com and our movie podcast, Show Me the Meaning. But where can we find you guys on the internet?
Alec.
I changed my Twitter handle. It's at @WisecrackAlec. It's way easier to remember.
Oh, beautiful. Simplicity. And you can find me at Ryan Shorts, comedy shorts every week, and Ryan's Game Show, a comedy game show in my garage with strangers off Craigslist.
Nice. And you can hit me up on email or on Instagram at Father of Woody, where you can see pictures of my dog. All right, guys, that's it for today. Squanch y'all later.
Wubba wubba dub dub from Hollywood, California.